So welcome everybody to my live session on Stringstastic. You have me, Lorraine, on Stringstastic. I am here with Barry Green, who is currently in Ohio, and we'll be talking about the importance of you. So I'm just gonna quickly read in regards to who Barry is, or rather I will just to mention that I met Barry about 2 years ago, I think it was, in the string conference in Florida, right before COVID and right before chaos happened in the world. So it's been quite interesting. And Barry was supposed to do a tour in Australia on that same year. I think it was 2000 or 2001. Is it 2001? 2000, yes, 2000, 2 years ago. Yes, 2000. So Barry has a whole wide of experience and knowledge in regards to what he does. So he is a native Californian. He is a bassist, a principal bassist in a couple of symphonies for many years, I can see. And he has written
Cincinnati Symphony for 28 years when I was very young.
You're still young, so not a problem. And he's also written a couple of books, and one of them is the inner game of music itself. So if you haven't had a chance to look into it, you are more than welcome to look into it. So I think also Barry has done or collaborated with a couple of educators in regards to studying string exercise 2 years ago, actually. So if you're interested in looking into that, you by all means, you can always check that out. So Barry, we have you here on the importance of you.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here. I love Australian. I've been to Australia 6 or 7 times. The last time was probably 4 or 5 years ago. And I just love the people. It feels very much like home, frankly. But the people are what make it special. And so it's always been a pleasure. I was honored rather recently to have a article in the ASTA news journal.
Yes.
And that was on the art of the note. And we're not going to really deal in that, but that was the most recent thing with my connection. And I've done several articles for Stringendo. So that's really cool. So what I'm probably most known for and what inspired all of these trips to Australia is that book that you just held up, The Inner Game of Music. And that was written a long time ago. It's based on a book that Timothy Galway wrote on the inner game of tennis from the mid-70s. It was the largest selling book on sports in the history period. I mean, it's literally amazing. But the reason it sold so well was because it wasn't a book about tennis. It was a book about what goes on in the mind of any person when they're invested in a skill, and the metaphor in this case was on the tennis court with skills that they've acquired. For us, it's music. It could be acting, it could be dance, it could be theater, it could be surgery. If you've been trained in a certain area and then you're under pressure to perform where either you're being graded or people are watching, then we are faced with challenges of doubt and fear and distractions, mental distractions. And so Timothy Galway wrote his book on the inner game of tennis, used tennis court being something that we could relate to, but people read that book with their own areas of interest in mind. And so for musicians, we read The Inner Game of Tennis until I collaborated with Timothy Galway, and we can still read The Inner Game of Tennis, but we brought it more closer to the home of musicians and teaching and performance. And so I thought I would devote the first part of our talk here to a very quick overview of the inner game. The inner game of music was published in 1986, I believe. It came to Australia a little bit later. And since then, there's been more developments with the inner game. I've also written 2 other books. The inner game is primarily on the mind, of concentration, but my interest and area is about the mind, body, and spirit. It's the whole individual, who we are as human beings, that this is what we do. We don't just play music on a music stand. It's more about the person behind the music, that we communicate as human beings. And we have a lot of methodology and resources for how to play or do the specific things, whether it be play violin, viola, cello, or bass, or any wind instrument. But the other side of it is who's behind that instrument. And that's the world in which I'm fascinated, and I've devoted my whole professional life to exploring not just only what goes on in your mind, but how we communicate with our body and who we are as a personality, what kind of personality we bring to our discipline, whether it's teaching, whether it's performing, or learning ourselves. We may touch on all of these areas, but this is the overview, and it starts initially with the inner game, because that's something that most everybody is concerned with. I liken it to being in jail, being a prisoner of your own anxieties and your own fears. And nobody wants that. Everybody wants to get out of jail and be free and have nobody standing over our shoulder telling us how good or bad we are, or what's happening.
That has been me when I was young, but we'll not get there.
Right. Well, it's human nature, and it's something that goes on for virtually everybody. And it will always be there too. And the only value of the inner game is that we save some time and we stop the struggle, and instead we refocus our attention on the music. I mean, the whole concept of the inner game can be summarized in 4 words. I say, turn up the music. So if you make a choice to connect with the music instead of listening to this inner voice in your head of doom and gloom and anxiety and all the other things, then the music drowns out the shouts. The music becomes what we're connecting with. And we do that through 3 really simple skills. So I'm going to play a quick 2-minute overview demonstration with me playing as a bass player. It is a joke. It's a total disaster of what happens. It's like a meltdown when we get completely overwhelmed by these anxieties. And then we'll explore some of the concepts theoretically. And then more recently, in the last 35 years since inner games, I want to share my favorite techniques that I think I have. They're my go-to, my first places to start if we gave examples of how we play the inner game. So we're going to start with a little screen share here. And if that's happening, are we on screen share now?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so I'm going to bring this up. And here I am with my bass, and we'll do a little inner game.
Check. Inner game, outer game. What's the rule? We find new paths to use as a tool. We turn away from doubts and fears and put the music in our ears. Now tell me the point of the inner game.
Come on, Barry. Settle down. Don't be so nervous. Make a fine impression. Uh-oh. Did you remember to comb your hair over your receding hairline?
Forget it, Barry. You're going bald.
Thanks for reminding me.
You're playing out of tune.
Yeah, I know. Maybe Mom was right.
Barry, I told you to practice this week, and you had to be watching all those ball games. You have to practice more, son.
Oh,
Nobody could tell.
I heard that.
Now I've got a pain in my back.
Barry, what are you doing? Your bone n'est pas straight. Relax your hand. It must be supple. Straighten up. Fix the tone. Why you use that finger? And no. The sound is all wrong. I tell you this before and you know listen to me. Less pressure. More speed. Faster. Slower. Mon Dieu, c'est dommage. Vous êtes confusé.
I'm starting to sound pretty good now.
This is where you're going to really screw up.
No, I'm not. Did you hear that nice sound?
Yeah, but your pitch is getting flat.
I know, but I'm almost at the end. I'm not listening to you anymore.
Barry,
You
I wanna
start to
talk
talk
to
to me
you.
again.
Come
and I'm
on, let's
listening to my
collaborate.
bass, the music.
I can
not
help you. Let's boogie.
Bye,
Don't
bye.
ignore me.
I'm out of here.
Talk to me,
I hear
Barry.
you, but I'm not listening to you now.
Barry. I
Goodbye.
want to talk to you. Come on. Let's collaborate. I can help you, Barry.
Okay, so.
I think all of us can relate to that.
You can. All right. Well, hope,
Absolutely.
do you actually have those voices in Australia? You mean that's something that you're familiar with too?
Well, I remember growing up, and it's like mom's a musician, so it's always all about you're not good enough, or you're out of tune. You should be like what your video was. You should be practicing more. That is out
Right.
of tune. Your rhythm's not right. You're getting too fast. Like all these things, and what's people gonna think about that kind of thing? So it's a lot of noise that I've had to overcome
Right.
in my
Well,
years.
Well, there's the good news is you're normal. and-
It is.
It's something we all have in common. So, and the whole question is, what do we do when we hear that voice, and how do we manage that voice? And as I say, we just turn up the music. And this is this theory here. This is the academic portion of our little lecture here that we started. If you could see my little cursor here, around that 100 up on the left-hand corner, is that visible on the screen?
Yes, 100%.
Good.
Yeah.
So that's where we all start with our what we bring to the table. That's what we practice, what we've learned to present, and it's inside of us. The question is what comes outside. And what happens is that as we begin to play, all of a sudden that voice comes in, like what you just heard, having to do with your personal appearance, how your hair looks, and all that kind of stuff, the difficult things that go on in the music, the difficult techniques that come around, and then there's a repeat and they're still hard. This business about being right. My French teacher, I hope that was really clear, that if you're paying attention to all the instructions of what you have to do, you can't be listening to the music. You can't hear what you're doing. And so you can be correct and lose. And because what we're really striving for is music. So just striving to have your fingers in the right place and the bowings in the right place does not necessarily mean that it's going to access your potential. And then this thing at the bottom here, the thing about winning, if you're thinking about what goes on after you finish playing, like if you're going to win the competition, you're going to get a good grade, or people going to like you, or perhaps when you're playing, there's going to be a party afterwards and you're hungry and you wonder, what are they going to serve at the party? It's going to take away from that 100% that we began our attention and all of our practice because we spent our attention doing this. And so only a small percentage, which is what I just demonstrated of what we're capable of playing, comes out. Our goal here with the inner game is real simple. You start the second line with 100% of what you want, and you don't want any of this stuff here. You want to end with 100%. And so we're striving for what Timothy Galway calls that state of relaxed concentration, where you're both calm and that at the same time you're focused, that you could remember literally everything that you have worked on that brings you to this moment. And without any voices, any distractions, all you hear is music. So here's the way it kind of works. When I said the 4 words, turn up the music. So you come along, all of a sudden you're worrying about what you look like. Well, instead of listening to that voice, you can start paying attention to what sounds you hear in the music, becoming aware of things. The three skills of attention are awareness, commitment, and trust. And we'll explore, as I mentioned, my favorite, more recent, most popular techniques in each of these categories. Awareness has to do with just paying attention to what's going on in the moment. Sights, like the images of the notes, images of music, sounds, having to do with volume, rhythm, pitch, timbre, feelings, having to do with the feelings implied in the music or feelings in your body, and what you know about the music, like whether you're playing a bunch of black notes that look very intimidating, or whether it happens to be just scales or harmonies or something, some kind of a development of a theme. The second category has to do with commitment techniques, which means what's going on? What are you supposed to be doing? Two sides to commitment, really, really simple. One has to do with how does the music go? The other one has to do with how are we going to do this on the bass or the cello or the violin. That has to do with our fingerings, our bowings, our articulations, the specifics of fitting the music of Bach to the violin or to the piano or to anything else that we're doing. That's our commitment. So often when you don't know what you're doing or you don't know what the right notes are, then that voice is going to come in. You leave yourself very vulnerable for these distractions. And so when you start to worry about whether it's right or not, maybe all you need to do is remind yourself is, why am I doing this? What am I saying? And how do I do it? Do I use the first finger or the second finger? So often in demonstrations, I would ask the question when somebody has a problem, they will tell me, well, this passage is really, make too many notes and I usually miss this particular note. And I say, well, how do you play that note? And sometimes they say, well, I don't know. Sometimes I do it this way or that way. That shows that we're not sure what we're doing. The last part of the technique of the inner game are trust techniques, and those are metaphors. So metaphor having to do with not just trust, believing things are going to work out, but that word refers to the specific essence of the music. So if you are playing a beautiful melody and it happens to be a song, then it could be that you should play the song. If you're playing music that is very fast and difficult, if it happens to be a chase or a march or something that has energy, then we play the dance form, or we play the excitement, or we play the accents, which is like an explosion. These metaphors, certainly when we teach young children, that's the only world that they understand. It's filled with what I call trust techniques, because we're always bringing it to them as far as finding simple things that they can relate to, that they could translate into a technical movement. Like I know a bowing technique, instead of doing a movement that goes in this direction, we make a rainbow. Another one, we make a U shape or something like that. These are examples that we do something that was familiar that also represents what's in the music. So that's simple. It's all about these techniques that we use. The concepts of the awareness, commitment, trust, it's only about music. There's no voice to it whatsoever. If you're going to listen to the voice, you're taking away some of your concentration. And so you only can be as good as you could multitask. But if you could put all your attention on the music, then just go to these musics, you connect with that, and then eventually our goal is to get back and relax and just play. And so the inner game becomes a temporary fix to get our concentration away from a negative distraction into what's meaningful with the music. And then our goal is to just enjoy the ride as long as possible until you recognize that voice coming back when we have to deal with it very quickly. So the value of the inner game is that you save a lot of time. You save time and you know what to do when you get in trouble.
So like this, you know, this kind of relates to all of us as performers, but it also relates to us as educators, because our students also feel the exact same thing. Like mom will be like, oh, put your bow tie properly, or, you know, all these noises that's coming in with the kids, especially like for us, we do a lot of music examinations. And I'm the one as a teacher have, like, even though I'm freaking out for my kids, I have to calm down my students right before their exam, because the parents are the one that's freaking out and putting a lot of stress on the kids. So it's applying all this theory and this method onto your students as well, as I know it would help. Like I always tell my students to try and block out all the unnecessary negative noises around them, like mom snagging and stuff like that, or you know, they wore the wrong shoes or something like that kind of thing, so that they can focus properly on the examination or performance.
Yeah, the goal of the teacher is literally to combine their focus of attention in the appropriate places. So if the student is anxious and is paralyzed by the voices, then you can help them, guide them, saying, well, let's listen to the music. What do you hear? Or when you get to that point, you can literally instruct them in the same way. You use your experience to point them into directions so that they can listen, they can hear, they can feel things that they're familiar with, and knowing that the voice has nothing to do with the music. And this is something that we can do both in our practicing as well as in our teaching and any performance. The same goes even in an ensemble situation. If you're in an orchestra, it's like the conductor is the brain, is the one that's telling the body, which is all these 50, 60, 100 musicians, what to do. And when a conductor is intimidating and is yelling at people and is not clear and confusing, putting all these doubts, then that's not going to be an efficient rehearsal. But the ultimate inner game conductor is one that just clearly communicates our body, or in this case, the musicians, to what should they hear, what should they feel, what should they see, what should they know, what's going on in the music. And once they get connected in those directions, they get focused, and they call it, everybody participates in a whole different way. The awareness techniques are known especially for solving problems. You know, when you're playing out of tune, well, the question is, where are we playing out of tune? And is it sharp or is it flat? And it's not a judgment. It's just that we can draw our attention for, say, pitch, to just noticing what's going on. So when you're in awareness mode, we use words like pay attention to, notice, listen, be aware of. And so it all gets us into that open state. And awareness technique is probably the most common first place to go when you do experience anxiety, because you want to refocus that attention to what's going on in the music. And what I have found to be the favorite and the number one go-to technique, why somebody says, well, what can I do? It's a particular awareness technique of feeling. Now, here's how the technique works. And you can translate this not only to performance, but to teaching or to many other disciplines as well. In terms of feeling, there's two feelings that are going on. There's how do you feel with your body? Okay, you're feeling nervous and terrified, and you're playing a lullaby. Okay, the lullaby is very calm and beautiful and peaceful. And you inside yourself are nervous. So those two aren't the same. So awareness technique can be very meaningful to redirect that inconsistency, to just notice, well, what's going on in the music and what's going on in your body. Well, how often do we as teachers really communicate the need to understand those two things? So for example, one person could say, well, I'm just playing the notes. I'm just playing the rhythm. I don't care what the feeling is. I don't know what the feeling is. Understand those two things.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. But the being held responsible for what kind of energy exists in every measure, in every phrase of what we're playing is something that I believe is very, very important. And not a lot of teachers emphasize this, or often a lot of students don't think about that. They just are translating a rhythmic thing into sound. And so monitoring that, okay, it starts very calm and then it gets a little more exciting, and then there's some tension in there, and then at the end it gets calm and then there's an ending. Okay, so this could be an arch, for example, of the energy that's going on in the music. And then the other side is, how often are we told to scan our body completely as to what are we feeling in our body while we're playing? So here the music is starting here and our body is really excited up here. And then all of a sudden the music gets more exciting and then we're with it. But then all of a sudden it's exciting and we're feeling a little bit detached. All of a sudden our energy is below the music, you know? And so I once did this with a singer, and it was the most profound experience where I had her sing. She talked about being unconnected with the music. And so I had her sing and put her arms out like this. And the one hand was literally what I'm doing here, that was saying, this is the music. When the energy rises or when it falls, I want you to just raise or lower your left hand as you're singing. And then on your right hand, I want you to let us know what's going on with your body. And so it's kind of like a roller coaster ride. So the music starts rising and she's still not with it. Now she has to raise her energy. Now the music's calmer and now she's calmer. No, it's too calm. And so we have to keep bringing these things together. And that awareness was so profound. I remember this vividly, and it happened 10 years ago. But we can do that when our hands are busy playing a string instrument. We can't be independent like a singer or most any other instrumentalist. Their hands are busy, but they could do it in their mind. And that's the powerful thing that will completely eliminate the judgment of anxiety being bad. It just has to do we need it or not? You know, sometimes what we do know is the fact that excitement and anxiety are really the same symptoms physically in our body. It's just our perception that whether we're scared or whether we're excited, that's our mind that makes that. But as far as what does it feel like? All of a sudden, if you're feeling nervous, but if the music is getting excited, well, that could be a really good thing. You need that energy to play that music. So that's an example of a really cool awareness technique. I'd like to just run into a quick commitment technique as far as the goals and the wills. Under commitment has to do with what are we doing and how are we doing this. So what are we doing is knowing the music, knowing exactly how the music sounds. How much time do we really spend really studying the music so that when you make a mistake, you know what the mistake is. And I believe that this can be done in advance, that you really need a lot of time listening so that we never really want to practice mistakes. I have a philosophy that we learn what we practice and we practice what we learn, but you never want to practice what you don't know, because that's just going to get reinforced. And one of the worst things we could do is to practice until you get it right. And then when you finally get it right, you think you're finished. but in reality, you've never really practiced.
That's what I
Because
keep
you'll-
telling my students. I'm like, you can't be practicing your mistakes here. Let's take it from the
Yes.
top.
Exactly, exactly. So the only way to do that is to find a way to learn separately, learn in advance, and only practice what you know. I like to say there's the music, and then there's the mind, and then there's the body. Okay, we don't want the music at all. If you're going to just go from the music, very often you go from the music to the mind. That takes time to process, and then you're never aware, or you're never attentive to what your body is doing. But what our real goal is to play the music that's in our head, that's in the world that we understand. It's like if you're going on a trip, or if you're reading a map, the music is like a map. And so when you go on a trip, you don't stare at the map while you're walking. You look at the map, you figure out where you're going, or in the car, and then you go there. And then if you get lost, you pull over to the side of the road and you figure out where you're going. But you'd never go someplace in your car if you didn't know where you were going, where you're not supposed to anyway. And it's the same thing with the music. If you spend some time to internalize the music, how it goes, the sound, the rhythm, and then you also figure out your fingerings and your bowings, the other side, then you get that together, then you practice what you've learned, which is up here. I also believe really firmly that we shouldn't ever practice mistakes. The way to do that is to work with smaller segments, really smaller segments. And if you can't play something without staring at the music with your fingerings and your bowings, you haven't learned it, you know. But we don't have to necessarily memorize to do that. All we really do is that when we're learning it, we work with a smaller segment so that you have it in your head and you can play what's in your head rather than what's on the page. And then that transfers that out, and then you just connect these segments. And another aspect of that learning is, and many of us are string players, that I assume, we talk about slow practicing and then moving up to tempo. There's different philosophies about that, but that's once again a hint of still practicing mistakes. If you start slow, and I believe it's important to start slow, to learn what are the notes, what's the rhythms, how are we doing it, getting it in our head, nothing wrong with that. But then to work by increasing the tempo a little bit each time, you're still never practicing what you really want to play. What's the alternative? Take a smaller segment, learn what you have to learn in your head, and then play it at the tempo from your head, and only play a small thing, because then you're practicing the movements, the space, and the time that you're actually going to be performing at. So what you're practicing is what you really want to play, okay? And so you could save a lot of time doing this by putting it into your head and doing that kind of preparation with small segments of music, and then finalizing it and rehearsing that over and over and over, so you've got it, and then go to the next section. Before you know it, you've got everything learned, because
Yep,
it's all
so being confident in one section first before expanding it to the rest of the piece.
absolutely, absolutely. But this whole concept of, okay, we're going to play it slow. Now next week we're going to play it a little faster. Then we're going to play it a little faster. You haven't really learned it that way. You're not learning all of it. You're learning some things. There'll be some muscle memory that's trained, but you could train the muscles just as well by working with smaller segments and doing what you really want to be doing. So that's about commitment in the detail that we have to do to really understand what we're playing and how we should play it. And in terms of trust concepts, it's the difficult metaphor And trust techniques have to do with, once again, understanding what the music represents and going directly to the source. If this piece is written as a dance, then we need to play a dance. If it's written as a song, we need to play a song. If we're just describing something that's very peaceful and then gets exciting, then that's what we have to feel and communicate within our bodies. And so it's not like we could put a word on every, or an adjective on every piece of, every phrase or every bar that we play. You can't translate everything into a story or a picture or whatever it might be. But the best word for trust skills is energy, because it's like texture, like colors, like these are things that we can grasp and understand, as well as a scene or a specific dance or a dialogue between two people that is like a conversation, which is also trust techniques.
So sometimes I like to get students to draw little pictures on each line so that they can remember how that's supposed to sound like. And for my singing students, because I do teach singing as well, like in order to help them memorize lyrics and sections of the piece, I get them to draw little pictures of what the story is all about to kind of help them. So it kind of creates a different emotion and feeling to the music, especially for singers itself.
Classic. It's absolutely critical. And the other thing, which is literally my number one favorite trust technique, is the voice, is the need, and especially as string players, for us to use we are singers with the instrument. That's all there is to it. And to connect our breathing. I'm a bass player and bass teacher, and I insist that my students breathe through their mouth when they're playing. If their mouth is closed, it's going to cause tension. And when they get tense, the whole thing gets very tense. When you're breathing with the music, it will reflect your voice. And the goal for the singing is to make your inner voice lead your outer voice. Your inner voice can either be vocalized, and we could sing what we play and play what we sing, which we teach, and is wonderful to do that. But it also can be very loud in our head, even though we're not using our vocal cords, because in essence, if you're singing and playing, you're dealing with two instruments at the same time, your voice and your playing instrument. But the voice in our head controls the voice in our throat. And so you don't need to activate those throat muscles, but if you're breathing, then you could do it through your breathing. I teach a lot with that, and my Stringercise program is actually, it inspired that whole project, is how do we get people to sing that don't want to sing, especially as string players. And I'd like to show a little short example of that process in which we were able to teach that, that concept of singing, which is literally a trust technique. And it has to do with how do we translate the voice in our head to the voice on our instrument. The real thing we're striving for is to have our outer voice be a shadow of what is being led to our inner voice. So our inner voice is actually louder than the outer voice. Just like if you're a teacher and you're playing along with your student, you'll probably lead them, play a little strongly so that they can play in your shadow. Well, this is the same concept that we want to use with our head, that we make that voice a little bit louder. Now, how do you make it louder? One of the ways to come in touch with it is to sing out loud and then mute it. But first have it so that you could actually drown out your instrument with your voice because it's so loud in your head. But then you could mute it and you can make it even softer. My little exercise with my Stringercise program, which I'm going to go to right here.
You can share your screen again.
Yeah. Oh, wait, I lost screen
No,
share?
I unshared, so you can share it again.
Oh, okay. I saw that go away. Okay, here we go. We're going to go there. Okay, share. Very cool. All right. So under my website, which is innergameandmusic.com, there's several things that we can explore. I have several articles. I have sections on articles. I'll give you a blitz through the site, but there is Stringercise is on that where you can get to these files. And we just republished this internationally. And so I'm just, yeah, it sounds like a sales pitch, but but the fact is that the students in international, anybody outside of America can get the thing for almost half the price of what Americans pay for it. So it's like $79 for like 50 exercises and 8 to 10 hours of content. And so for international things, it's like only $49 for students and all international things. And that's available now for anybody that wants to check it out. There's on the introduction page, which is where we are right now, there are 3 sample exercises, of which one is the sing and play exercise. And I'll show you how that works. And then once you get into the files, the categories are really under the exercises and clinics are under 4 different categories. They have to do with feelings, how we teach feelings with music, and techniques, string techniques, scales, and musicianship. And these, I think, are all as important that can be taught. But what I want to especially stress, though, is this first technique of the singing. Sing What You Play. Anybody can access the first overview of the opening page just by going to my website, and you'd see this. And I just want to go through quickly the stages of getting from the music into your head to where we could actually sing it. So in the first place, we're going to—
Did you share sound? Is this, does this have an audio for it?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Okay,
You might-
so this
yeah.
is Shenandoah. Oh, Shenandoah, do you know that song?
Yes.
So in the first place, you're just focusing on the notes and the rhythm to once again learn what it is that we're playing. Okay, it's only for that purpose. And we're going to move ahead from that version to the second level, which is now mouthing, breathing through your mouth. Okay, so what you do is that you just breathe and you still play, but you're breathing through your mouth. Silently mouth the melody on La with your breath while you play the instrument. So you could just imagine doing this a little bit, air bow it, and with your mouth going. Get the idea? Okay, this is just to, say, open your mouth and breathe with the music. That's
So as in following, like pretending to sing, or as in
yes,
actually
pretending
la,
to
la,
first.
la, la,
you
la,
haven't-
la.
Yeah, just breathe. Now you will sing. That's all coming. So this is getting to it, because the really challenge is how do we get people to sing and come in touch with that voice? The next level is air bowing, okay, and singing the melody vocally, okay? So now we don't play, but now the voice, we're going to get in touch with our own voice. So imagine this, now we're a choir, okay? Get that? Okay, so that was
Okay.
purely singing so that we could sing along. And here, the fact that the voice is so loud, the choir is loud, you won't feel self-conscious about singing. So you can just sing, but you can sing it at least. All right, so then the next level is going to be, let's sing louder than you're playing. So we come in touch with our voice first, and now we're going to play and sing, but we're going to try to sing and drown out our playing so that we're ingraining that voice in our head and our vocal
Still,
cords.
we're saying that some students won't do it, so I make it like a competition. Like, okay, we'll see which group does the best, kind of thing. So
Okay.
yeah. So
Okay.
they sing in tune, because sometimes they tend to just sing loudly but out of tune. So they sing in tune, and I'm like, okay, every single one of you, I'm gonna listen to all of you and make sure all of you are singing to be considered as the winning group, kind of thing, to kind
Okay.
of encourage the singing part.
Okay. That sounds great. So, but the fact that they sang along with the choir already and they just airbowed, now we've broken down some of the barriers as far as the singing, any kind of singing is concerned. And this is, yeah, it's just like have fun, drown out your instrument. So now you'll hear the voice and the instrument singing and playing. And this is actually the singing and playing. But there's still a finale yet. So there you go. So it's just when you hear the voice and you hear everybody else singing while we're playing, singing and playing, we've done this several times. This I developed with Bob Gillespie, great string educator. It's never been a problem when you go through these steps, but the whole key to it is breaking it down into these small steps so that they're not even aware that they're singing. And the final section is, okay, now we're going to stop singing, but we're going back to the breathing part. And so we're still going to sing a la la, but without the voice. And now the instrument is your singing voice. Okay. So it's what we kind of did earlier, but now that our voice has been activated, we have that ability to go ahead. Let's see. So now the instrument is playing. So you're singing silently, but okay, so that's where we're going. And now all of a sudden everybody's breathing and they're singing silently, but their breath is open and their mouths are open. And it's a big contrast from trying to play all the right notes, reading all of those things and not playing out of tune. So, and this is what I would call a classic trust technique. We're kind of running out of time here. I want to give you a quick overview of my website and the resources that I have on that for you. Let me get to the page. Skip the intro. Okay, so this is my inner game set. It's all done through icons. These are publications. Here's the stringer size in the middle, but especially there's your stringendo right there. This article pages, and these are articles are post inner game. I've done 3 books, Mind, Body, Spirit. We are talking exclusively about inner game now. We don't really have the time today to get into the body mechanics of Bringing Music to Life was the third book, was on the body. And this is very similar to the inner game in that there's three techniques that we use towards our goal. Like inner game is relaxed concentration. The goal with the body is how do we use our body and have it work effectively? And it has to do with rhythm, the voice, believe it or not, and movement. The Mastery of Music, the second book, is having to do with personality, who we are and what we bring with our unique voice to music. What is it that we do that's unique to ourselves? And I interviewed over 120 world-class musicians in 10 topics of the human spirit, things to do with courage, confidence, passion, tolerance, creativity, communication skills, concentration, humor, all of these things that people can do as human beings that give them their unique spirit that they that allows them to be themselves, because this is what we strive for when you're hired, when you're remembered, when you're loved. It's not going to be just that you played the violin. It's going to be, well, how did you play the violin? What did you bring to your work? Was it that you were a great communicator? Is it that you were funny, that you were disciplined? All these kinds of things. Those are the three areas. And since then, I've been doing a lot of writing post these articles or these books and in additional projects. But these articles are all the beginning of perhaps this fourth book is going to be essays on musical inspiration, which is all about you as a human being. And one of them you just published in Stringendo was The Art of the Note, having to do, that's this first article right over here, with what's inside a note. And it is in the category of commitment as far as inner game, because what is it that we're doing? And it enlarges the detail of that. We don't just play the beginning of the note, that there's a middle and there's an end of a note that we often are neglecting.
So for those of you that don't know, Stringendo is a music magazine publication based in Australia for string teachers and string players. So we get them here. People may not know what Stringendo is from overseas, so that's what Barry's talking about. So I'm assuming that even though they are not based in Australia or they don't get the magazines here, they can still read that article through your
You
website.
got it.
Yeah?
There it is. Here it is. There's the whole article. This is from Stringendo, and it's all there, so you don't need it. I mean, I'm delighted for you to play to get it from Stringendo, but all these articles that I've published are also on the website. This is very much about the body, from good to great. It's my own chair factor, having to do with how we use physical energy. And it was an article about, this is having to do with the relationship between greatness and whether your back is touching the back of your chair as a string player. Do you see that? As opposed to this, where you're about to jump out of your chair and they don't. And I found, this sounds pretty bizarre, but the whole article was based on the fact of how we use this energy right there. That if you want to know how good an orchestra is, all you have to do is look at the violins and the violas and even the cellos and see how many of them are touching the back of their chair with their backs. If there's a relationship between those that do and those that don't, and the music that's coming out. That's all I could say. Read the article. You think it's kind of humorous almost, but the fact is the matter that when you're engaged, you can't be like this.
No, that's right.
Most recent article I did was on competition And this one was for this international competition for bass. They asked me to write an article for their new competition, and I wrote them everything that they didn't want to hear about competition. Good competition versus bad competition. And the fact is, I hate competition. But when can it be good? When is it meaningful? And that is essentially what that's about. And essentially, it's about being the best version of yourself. You can't compete with somebody else, period.
And that's the good thing, being the best versions of yourselves, isn't it?
That's the whole spirit of that article. This also has not been published yet, 7 Pathways. It has to do with the next step. People are changing careers like crazy now, right?
Absolutely.
And it's normal, you know. We used to aspire for these corporate jobs where you get a job and you're there for the rest of your life. Those kinds are kind of over with, or there are very few of them. But we usually reinvent ourselves every 5 to 10 years, whatever it is, and over a lifetime of working, you'll probably have several different kinds of opportunities. But the question is, what is it that's going to allow you to be successful in this area? And with this article, it was really based on interviews with about 7 amazing people dealing with 7 qualities that help them when they changed careers from perhaps being a section violinist to being a conductor, or being a concert master, or sometimes from stepping down from a leadership position to go into a different kind of work. And so it's a very extensive article. I had a ball doing this, spent months on that. The 7 steps. Oh yeah. And there's another article on why we make music. This is a lot to do with why you're doing what you're doing, period. I'm bringing in some unique concepts of, in choir, they have SATB.
Yes.
But the same words, the same letters I use as a keynote to why we make music, as to the things in music that make sense. See if I could get to the final drawing. There it is, the SATB. So this has to do with the kinds of things that enrich our lives, and that why we're really doing it, the things that give us goosebumps, and having to do with choosing music for your soul, choosing music that connects us to the world, awareness of our whereabouts, choosing music and engaged in music that transports us into another world, and choosing music that gets into our bodies, that makes us move. And so we talk about this in length, and so much for that. I'm working on 4 more for the next year or so, having to do one with which we just talked about the new techniques, most recent, most popular techniques of the inner game. I'm going to do an article on ego, good ego versus bad ego. Egomaniacs, ego, what I'm talking about?
Yes, ego.
I mean, it's, just like competition, there's good competition, there's bad competition.
That's right.
There's good ego, there's bad ego. I can't wait to do that one. And I'm going to do another one on the musical entrepreneur, on how we can be creative as musicians when we can't get the job we want, to creating something ourselves as an independent professional, looking at what other people have done, which are really amazing, where somebody could say, well, I could do that. And that's going to be an inspiration. And my final chapter of that is literally your final chapter. It has to do with when it's time to let go and to leave whatever it is that you're doing and go on to something else, or it's time to pass it on to the next generation, you know.
Oh, I'll be looking forward to that one.
Yeah, so it's what would, you know, there's a point at which you have to say, I've done this, I've done this, and it's time to move on. And there's another time to say, you better quit because you don't have it, you know, or you just can't live that long. And there's a point at which I mean, that's the end of life, but you do end of career all the time. And that is to me very fascinating as to what, how you know when it's time to move on, put it that way, you know, to let it go.
Yes, because I think a lot of us are stuck in an area or profession where, you know, sometimes it's too long or sometimes it's just not pleasant. So, you know, like you say, it's when to move on, you know, whether or not you've done your duty, all those many years there, or just trying out something new to kind of inspire you to do more or to do better. In that sense.
Absolutely. You hit the, will you help me with this then?
If you want to, by all means.
Okay, there you go. Okay. Well, you'll be one that I'll interview.
All
Okay.
right, brilliant.
Right.
Okay,
So
yeah,
That's it.
great, brilliant. So, you know, guys, if you have time, you know, you can read them. You don't have to read all of it. But
Well,
yeah,
it's there, and frankly, this will
Absolutely.
ultimately come out in a book, but everything is all coming out as it comes out, and it's all free.
Yeah.
So,
Otherwise, guys,
right.
this one. But yeah, so thanks Barry for all those knowledge and sharing all those. Just before you leave, just want to share with you all in regards to what's happening next month. Next month, about the same weekend, the first weekend of the month, I'm going to be having Ikmar from Sprout Beat. We'll be looking into interactive music theory sheets online. This is for all instruments, whether or not it's piano, violin, woodwind, or guitar, or anything. She covers all that range, and we'll be covering the base in terms of how we can make music theory fun through those interactive music sheets online. So that's very quick. And we'd like to say thank you to Barry for hopping on this month's live with me on Stringtastic. So thank you so much, Barry. It's a pleasure of having you on board. And I guess all of us would have benefited from all that. And we would be looking through your articles and hopefully getting your book, guys, in your game of
Well,
music.
thank you so much. And if you have any questions, or if you want to reach me personally, my email is no problem. It's really complicated. It's Barry, Barry, at innergameofmusic.com. So hopefully,
Otherwise, I'll share that on the link before after we end this, and it will be
Sure.
on, yeah, and I'll include your website as well. So if anyone wants to reach out to you, by all means, they're most welcome to.
love to hear from anyone.
All
Okay.
right, brilliant.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely pleasure to have you. And I hope all of you have a brilliant weekend. Until next time, see you guys. Bye.
Bye now.